Welcome into a new episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. I'll be joined by the fighter Pete Rogers. You're going to get you ready for UFC Vegas 99, which goes down tomorrow. Inside the UFC Apex, lock time will be 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. Pacific time. Of course, also we have a PFL card tomorrow afternoon. Of course, that is their pay-per-view from Saudi Arabia, as we'll see the return of Francis Ngannou as he steps inside the cage for the first time in 32 months, challenged by 𝗵𝐻. And Pete, I'll just start right here. My favorite parlay of the week may be 𝗵𝐻 and Chris Cyborg.
Damn, you're doubting Francis Ngannou still.
Okay, 32 months away.
Yep.
Coming off a brutal knockout.
Yeah.
And I think someone's likely going to look. We're going to see the finish on social media within 2 to 3 minutes of it. I feel like. My gut just tells me 𝗵𝐻 is going to pull this off tomorrow afternoon in Saudi Arabia.
Who do you think has a better shot, 𝗵𝐻 or Chris Cyborg?
Cyborg.
I think Pacheco knocks her out. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I think I'm interested in the Pacheco side. Heavyweight MMA is so volatile. You could make an argument for either one. I mean, granted, Ngannou's done more in his career, clearly. But 𝗵𝐻 has been the hot fighter and the guy just destroying everybody. I mean, look what he did to Bader. Look what he's done the entire PFL heavyweight division. You can make an argument, and I really wouldn't argue with you. You can see it going either way. What are the lines? I haven't even looked at the lines on that. Do you know?
When I did a parlay earlier this week, I got it at plus 540.
Okay, Cyborg are they both underdogs?
Yeah, they're both underdogs. Cyborg's like, I want to say she was like plus 115, somewhere in that range. And 𝗵𝐻 is like in that plus 250 range. The numbers actually going down a lot.
𝗵𝐻 underdog for months.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, man. I'll throw a crazy stat out to you. Okay, so last time we saw Francis Ngannou in MMA competition was UFC 270. You know how many UFC champions at that time are still UFC champion?
Probably zero.
The longest reigning UFC champion right now is Islam Makhachev. He won the UFC lightweight title in October of that year.
Damn. And that's when it was like Izzy, Ngannou, Usman, that whole reign.
Yeah, I mean, that just it tells you a lot about just how this sport is. And look, I think what I'll be fascinated about that fight is how is Ngannou's fighting style in that one? Is he a more patient fighter, or does he just come out and say, I'm here to show I'm still the king, I'm the best heavyweight in the world? And I mean, look, 38 years old, it concerns me a little bit there. I will say this, the fight that intrigues me the most on that fight card is 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 versus Paul Hughes.
Yeah, that's a great fight, right? Like, and I got to tell you, I haven't even looked at this PFL card. I feel like it's a good product from everybody that I have seen on the social media. I mean, Cyborg, I'm a big fan of Cyborg. I like 𝗿𝐿ise Pacheco. I like 𝗵𝐻. I like Francis Ngannou. I'm a big fan of that fight as well, and that's kind of hard to see. Like, I think that Hughes is legit. I think McKee is legit as well. So we'll have to see, how they look when they collide, but it's on tomorrow in the afternoon.
Yeah, the pay-per-view starts 4 p.m. Eastern time. So for people watching us here in the United States, that'll be on ESPN+. Internationally, it will be on DAZN. So, it should be an interesting one there. Of course, the UFC card will be starting as the pay-per-view is starting over there. So we got a ton of MMA to take in here. Of course, we haven't been here for, 2 weeks or so because last week, dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Milton here in the Tampa Bay area, not having power in the office or at home. And but everything is well. Everything is well in that aspect, as opposed to someone hit my rental car last night in the parking lot. So I got to deal with that at some point.
Yeah. What in the world? Hey, you got any new updates on the car or anything? You still dealing with the insurance companies and all that stuff? Still
waiting on the. I mean, the car has been ruled totaled.
Oh,
so
good. Okay, good.
I am actually waiting for the salvage yard to pick up the car, and then basically, the insurance will tell me what they're going to pay me out, and then before I sign anything, I will be sending that document to my attorney to say, hey, is this legit? But yeah, man. Overall, hey man, knock on wood. this could have been a lot worse. You drive around this area. I'm sure anyone who's not in the Tampa Bay area, you see video. Look at Tropicana Field. Just, I mean, God. Literally, I drive to the office and I see Tropicana Field every day when I come to the office. It is a unbelievable scene. And the fact of they're not playing baseball there this year, they may never play another game in Tropicana Field.
That's really crazy to me.
Yeah.
I mean, and the craziest thing, thankfully you're okay, and a lot of people are okay. It could have been a lot worse, but still was pretty devastating. I think the craziest thing for me being up here in New England is just seeing like all those tornadoes just striking down and having like that crazy outbreak of tornadoes for you guys. Like that was crazy. That was destructive.
I will say this. So I ended up going over to Central Florida to get away from this storm when it was coming in. Might have been in the biggest hotel gym I have ever seen in my life, Pete. I mean, this thing had to be 2,000 square feet.
Damn.
I mean, had everything you would want to get a workout in. I mean, like, you go to a hotel gym. Usually there's maybe like 2 or 3 treadmills. Maybe there's elliptical. Maybe there's a bike. Maybe there's a couple machines. Maybe a couple of free weights. But man, this thing had everything. It was awesome. It was awesome to get that workout in. Because what else was I going to do as opposed to just sit up in my hotel room? I mean,
nothing.
So it was nice to get in there. But yeah, everything is well over there. Of course, we appreciate everyone who tunes in for this episode and every episode of Fight HQ. Of course, we do have memberships right here on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check out that. I'm starting to kind of get back into the swing of work things here, getting, I guess, quote unquote, back to a normal life here. So we do appreciate everyone that tunes in here. But of course, we know you're here to listen to us break down UFC Vegas 99. And Pete and by the way, our DraftKings contest is live. That link is in the show notes, also in our Discord channel. That is totally free to join. And, when you talk about game theory here, Pete, first off, I think you look at, the salaries of some of these fights that you may want to get to the main event. Hernandez and Pereira, 8,300, 7,900, respectively. On DK. Jake Hadley is probably going to be someone that's going to be popular because of the late fight change in terms of this one. Cameron Smotherman stepping in here on just a couple days' notice to take on Jake Hadley. Darren Elkins, Daniel Pineda, I think could be a fight that determines the big GPP contest this week. That's the 8,200, 8,000 fight. And I'll say this. I know there's some people in our Discord channel that are very confident in Darren Elkins. I don't have that confidence in. I don't know how you can have that confidence in Darren Elkins. And look, I don't know how you have the confidence in Daniel Pineda either. That is a do not trust fight on either side. But I think it's, I look at, the high end options. Despaigne is someone you look at just because, to me, the opponent is what sticks out to me here for Despaigne, as Austin Lane should try to get that one to the ground, but I don't think he will. I think Despaigne goes in there and knocks him out. What's your overall thoughts about game theory?
So my game theory, I think that the main event's the most popular fight on the slate, and it's because of the 5-round nature. You have a pace pusher in Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, priced at 8,300. You have a guy on an incredible run in Michel Pereira there at 7,900. So either way, whether it's a crazy volume fight or a quick finish, I think the price tag is appropriate for either guy, right? Because there are question marks. There's question marks about Michel Pereira's gas tank, and then there's question marks about Anthony Fluffy Hernandez's durability to the body. That's a very, very popular fight, and I think it should be a starting point for most of your lineups. The best leverage for the entire slate, I think, would be avoiding that fight. Do I recommend it? No, but I do think that it presents some incredible leverage for the slate. I would agree by saying that Hadley, Smotherman, relatively unknown, kind of on a run since his defeat on the Contender Series where he got knocked out, going up against Jake Hadley, who has been on a little bit of a run himself, doing pretty well, priced both as underdogs. So you already know that fight in general is just going to have ridiculous ownership attached to Jake Hadley. And it should, right? Like he's the easiest free square on the entire slate, priced at 7,700. It's a misprice. And then the next fight is the Pineda Elkins fight. 8,200, 8,000 fight, typically unavoidable for most slates. Man, this is one where you have a guy in Darren Elkins who, really takes a ridiculous amount of damage, hence the nickname. But possesses an incredible gas tank, pushes a pace, good wrestling to him. Daniel Pineda, a guy that really is an early round finisher, very dangerous, but can get broken over time. So it's like, what happens here? What happens first? And I do have some question marks surrounding both fighters within that fight, but another fight where if you avoid it, you have a ridiculous amount of leverage on the entire slate. And all you would need is just these other fighters and other fights, 6 other fights to really pop. It's possible. I wouldn't recommend it, but it is possible to have some leverage on the field.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I will tell you, there are some underdogs that, depending on how the fight goes, like I look at that co-main event, if Rob Font can keep the fight on the feet, that is an underdog that does intrigue me, especially if 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐼𝐵 has cardio issue as the fight goes on. But it's tough to trust the takedown defense of Rob Font. In that one, I'll tell you, another underdog that sticks out to me from a takedown upside, Brad Katona at 7,200. He's one that does stick out to me as well. Of course, if you have any questions, be sure to line those up in the chat. We'll get to those as we do go on. Let's get right into the main event. We got Anthony Hernandez, who is a minus 135 betting favorite, taking on Michel Pereira, who is at plus 115 betting underdog. As we talked about the DK salaries, $8,300 for Hernandez, $7,900 for Pereira, $18 and $15 respectively. One of the things as I've thought about this fight, Pete, is if this thing gets extended out, 3rd, 4th, even makes to the 5th round, that's where I look at Fluffy Hernandez as someone I really want to get to this week.
Yeah, and I think everybody's kind of in the same boat, right? Like you have Fluffy Hernandez, who has looked incredible. He's a wrestler. Kind of like a Marab type, where they just overwhelm you with activity. And if you cannot match that activity, and you cannot, if you're constantly defending, then you're unable to get off with your own offense. And that's where Fluffy just overwhelms you with his pace, his pressure, his wrestling, his submission attempts. Like, he's very good. I do think that on the feet, he's not as good as he is, in grappling transitions and in wrestling sequences. I think that he's there to be had on the feet. I think that he can be clipped, and most notably, he's soft to the body. And that'll go back to the Kevin Holland fight. It'll also go back to the Roman Kopylov fight. Like, we've seen him get hurt to the body, several times. And that's the thing. When somebody's too tough for their own good, you go to the body and you make the body quit on them. This is a situation where I think that Michel Pereira and his camp are very, very mindful of that. All the training I've seen, there's a lot of combinations incorporating body attacks. And just Michel Pereira in general, he hunts the body with his punches, his knees, his stabbing front kick to the body. So do I recommend just throwing kicks? No, because you can get your kicks caught. You have to set him up, inside, in tight. He can land a knee like Kevin Holland did. But I think the piece of Michel Pereira's game that everybody's sleeping on is his jiu-jitsu. Like, I think that he's pretty sound in that department. We've seen him capture the neck. We've seen him go on the back and grab rear naked chokes. And if he hurts Fluffy Hernandez at any time, it could lead to a 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐵 So I kind of have this feeling where, like, Hernandez is doing really well, or Hernandez has some moments. And then he gets a little too comfortable in some grappling situations, thinking that he can just, bulldoze over Michel Pereira. And then you realize that you're dealing with a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who has 42 fights. So I think that Anthony Hernandez, as good as he is, as talented as he is in the grappling and wrestling realm, I do think that there are moments for Michel Pereira to capitalize. Now, I hear a lot of people talking about the horrible gas tank of Michel Pereira. I can honestly say that I think that might be because of the cut to welterweight. I don't think that he's the same guy at welterweight as he is now at middleweight. I like Michel Pereira at 185. I think that this is his right home, the perfect weight class for him. Some guys, a lot of people don't realize they kill themselves to make the weight class, and then you are depleted going into the fight. It's an advantage in one hand, but if you can't find an early finish, then you're really just struggling. So for me, I'm still backing Michel Pereira, and I like him here. So a slight underdog, but I'm going to back Michel 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜 to find a finish, and I think it's a club and sub. I think that he's going to get Anthony Hernandez with the choke. I'm going to say a rear naked choke for Michel 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜, but this is one where like Anthony Hernandez can break the slate if it goes late. And it's a fight where I think that you need to have appropriate ownership. It's a split exposure fight, but as far as a pick, I'm picking Michel 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜 to finish Anthony Hernandez.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you kind of talked about a little bit earlier, I think this is kind of that must-have. I mean, one of the things I do kind of say, if Anthony Hernandez can utilize his takedown ability in this one, and I mean, look, I think for both these guys, that they understand that this is, I mean, look, on paper, I get why maybe you're not, people on the, if you're not kind of really following the sport, you may not be excited about this main event, but it is a notable matchup in the 185-pound division. I do lead Anthony Hernandez, and it's more about, thinking about his durability if the fight does go later on. And of course, our co-main event will be a bantamweight matchup. We got Rob Font taking on 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵. 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 a minus 450 betting favorite, plus 325 for Rob Font. Phillips 9,300 on DK, 6,900 for Font on DK. Font $11 on FanDuel, $22 for 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵. And I think that Pete, I completely understand why 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 is the favorite here. By the way, he's in a great room in Arizona. When you talk about 135-pound fighters, a lot of great guys in that room. And we know the deficiencies of Rob Font. We have really seen it play out, especially his past couple of fights, of just not being able to stop the takedown. But I do have a relative concern is, we've seen that gas tank on 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 a little weighing down in that third round. And if Rob Font can keep the fight on the feet, I don't mind taking a dog shot on Rob Font, but I do think 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 is a correct play.
Yeah, so for me, I'm not with people with the underdog for Rob Font. I could see how, like, just from an experience standpoint, like maybe this is one where this is a vet lesson. I just don't see it, and Rob Font is my guy. Like, I love Rob Font. I've fought on the same cards as Rob Font. I've always rooted for him. He's like the first guy within the New England area to break through and make it to the big show. And all the New England is a big fan of Rob Font. He's fought one of my guys. So like, as far as like personally, I want Rob Font to win. I think he's just going to be outgunned here. And that's me putting bias aside. I think even on the feet, 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 is way too much for him. And the reason I'm saying that is because Rob Font is just traditionally a boxer. He has great hands. He establishes the jab better than most people within the division, most people within MMA. I mean, him and Calvin Kattar established the jab like true boxers, which is very rare. Things need to be, developed off of your jab. So they do that to perfection. My issue, though, is that we've seen the durability wane a little bit from Rob Font over the course of the years. There's a 9-year or an 8-year age disadvantage for Rob Font in this. I mean, he is 37 years old. 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 is 29 years old. We have one fighter on the up, one fighter on the down. I also think that coming from a boxing background, we have Rob Font a little too heavy on his lead leg. And I will say that he's trained Muay Thai at 𝐷𝐻𝐻𝐿 forever. So he knows how to throw elbows. He knows how to throw kicks. He knows how to do everything. It's just that he predominantly gets his work done with his hands. I think that the hands and legs and blending the strikes of 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 is just too difficult to deal with. Then you bring into the grappling and wrestling equation, and I think that 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 is going to have a breakthrough performance. This could be me just kind of just like just expecting 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 to shine, mainly because of the training room that he's in Arizona. I mean, MMA Lab has the best 135-pound room in the world. I mean, you're talking about Marcus McGee, Mario Batista, 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵, Sugar Sean. I'm sure there's some others I'm forgetting as well. I mean, like that room is ridiculous. So at 135 pounds, I think that 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵, yes, he's shown to tire. Guess what? We all fatigue. And I tell all my fighters, and I've had to tell myself at times, we all fatigue. So every single fighter out there, fatigues. It's about how quick you can recover. And because he really overexerted himself in previous performances, like against 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵, searching for that finish, knocking him down and nearly finishing him, like 5 other referees would have stopped that fight. He overexerted himself. He pushed the pedal to the metal, as anybody should in that situation, and it left him a little gassed as the fight went on. You can't really fault him for that. He's young. He's over in Arizona. I just think that he has Rob Font covered everywhere here, and it hurts me to say because I want Rob to win. but I really think that 𝐃𝐬𝐬𝐜𝐵 Phillips is like the truth. So give me 𝐃𝐬𝐬𝐜 Phillips here. I think that he subs Rob Font or hurts him on the feet. So I know it's a hefty price tag attached to him, but I really think that the youth is going to show here, and we're going to see 𝐃𝐬𝐬𝐜 Phillips get a really big win. But I also want to note that Rob Font this camp has gone up to TriStar and gotten under the tutelage of �𝐷𝐵𝐵𝐵 𝐷𝐵𝐵. So that's something to note, and maybe that makes you like Rob Font a little bit more. But 𝐷𝐵𝐵𝐵𝐵 𝐷𝐵𝐵 is a part of Rob Font's camp to help him, throughout this matchup against 𝐃𝐬𝐬𝐜 Phillips. I just don't know as like 135 pounders at TriStar. I'm sure there are some great ones, but I'm not really too well versed in who's a part of that room at 135 pounds.
Yeah, it's one of those fights I could very well see this is for Rob. Your back is against the wall. I can very well see that if he doesn't go out there and get the win. Of course, some people may not realize Rob's actually originally from Tampa, moved up to Boston there, and but it's I think there's gonna be a lot of people probably in our listening audience that are going to be thinking about this. Would you rather have a 9,300 𝐃𝐬𝐬𝐜 Phillips with takedown upside, control upside, or a 9,400 Despaigne with 60-second knockout upside?
I ain't dealing with Despaigne, bro. I ain't dealing with him. he needs to earn some respect in my eyes, because my man went out there and was trash. So he's one-dimensional. But the argument's there.
Yeah, I think you can certainly understand why people may have that thought there. Next up, we got Charles Johnson taking on Sumudaerji. Sumudaerji is a plus 190. Betting underdog minus 235 for Charles Johnson. Johnson's 8,800 on DK, $16 on FanDuel. Sumudaerji 7,400 DK, $12 on FanDuel. If you've not been following Charles Johnson on social media, he, of course, initially from that St. Louis, Missouri area, has moved down to Florida. He's now training in Orlando at Fusion XL.
Yeah, I think that we're going to have some listeners disagreeing with me, and, I respect everybody's opinion. There's plenty of times I'm off on predictions, and there's plenty of times where I'm right on the money. I think that this is a trappy line, and I will say that usually Charles Johnson is in the underdog role. He has earned some respect with his recent run over Azat Maxim, over Joshua Van, but I still think that he's still the same guy. I think that he fools around a little too much for my liking. Some fights are a little too close for my liking. He has the most split decisions, whether they're wins or losses, on this entire fight card. So when I see that, and I'm like, all right, well, the margins in which he's winning and losing, I mean, it's kind of like it's all based on optics. And I do worry that he kind of screws around a little too much. Not only that, like his takedown defense is just it's not great. He is a solid offensive wrestler. He is a very good boxer. He has that knockout ability for a weight class that does not really possess knockouts. I think that the wild card on this fight card is Sumudaerji. I really do. I think there's two, and I'm going to highlight both of them. I think that Sumudaerji is the wild card. This is the guy who's an Asian prospect, the Tibetan Eagle, comes over, has some great success in the UFC, put him up against a tough vet in Matt Schnell, hurts him, nearly finishes him like 7 different times, then gets hit with some big shots, taken down, beaten up, and then eventually choked unconscious due to a triangle choke. And then they pin him up against Tim Elliott right after that, and he quickly gets arm triangle choked in round 1. I think that in certain matchups, we got to be careful for the Tibetan Eagle here in Sumudaerji. But in a willing kickboxing fight, I think that's the type of matchup where we can see the guy have, early success like he did in the UFC. We saw him come in and he picked up a decision victory over a good striker in 𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐵𝐻 𝐶𝐿, despite with what anybody else will say. Andre's a very good striker, been doing Muay Lao his whole life. Malcolm Gordon, yeah, he finished him really quick inside of the first minute. And then Zaruk Adashev, a good kickboxer that a lot of people don't know, competed in Glory, competed in Bellator, relatively new in MMA and picked up a decision victory. Now, I think that in a kickboxing atmosphere, we can see the length of Sumudaerji cause some problems just also because he's a southpaw. And then we have Charles Johnson, who we know likes to throw hands. A lot of times he's kind of like down on scorecards, though. Like he's always trying to, like, as the fight gets going, he's a slow starter, and then he has to build back into the fight and try to come from behind. I don't know, man. I think that this could be a mistake here, having Charles Johnson attached with so much love. I think that he really is a coin flip fighter. And 16-6 for Sumudaerji, 16-6 for Charles Johnson. Johnson, I would say, has the better strength of schedule for sure. The one thing that I do like is that Sumudaerji is younger, right? Like he's 5 years younger. So there is some room for development. And I've been, paying attention to his socials. And since that he got embarrassed and finished against Matt Schnell and Tim Elliott, he's really just, he's put himself in a good place to get better. And that's by going into Team Alpha Male and being a part of that room, training with Song Yadong and 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 daily since he lost to Tim Elliott and Matt Schnell. And I've seen drills, and his wrestling doesn't look bad at all. His wrestling actually looks pretty damn good. He's drilling with Song Yadong daily. I think that if he's used to a big body, talented Song Yadong, I think that he could do sneakily well in a certain matchup here against the guy who has the most split decisions on the entire fight card in Charles Johnson. It just screams like a trap to me. So, me, I tend to just use one lineup across everything. I have no problem taking a shot on Sumudaerji, who has knockout power, is pretty damn long, 2-inch reach advantage, and everybody's kind of crossed him off of winning this fight against Charles Johnson because of Charles Johnson's recent run. So give me the unknown in Sumudaerji, and I'll embrace the volatility with it.
I think Charles Johnson is one of those guys that we really like to get to in underdog roles, but this is not that situation. And I think with Charles Johnson, the one thing you're always concerned about is being taken down, and great things that you bring up there about him training at Team Alpha Male. And of course, we know what Team Alpha Male is all about. David over in chat about Phil, who I did some NASCAR coverage with. He actually has a Substack that you can subscribe to. If you just Race Sheets DFS on X, you can find that, and that's where all Phil's contents. He's a great mind when it comes to NASCAR DFS. Next up, we got Jake Hadley taking on Cameron Smotherman. Smotherman stepped up here on short notice. He's a plus 360 betting underdog. Jake Hadley minus 470. Hadley, because of the already having a price tag, he's 7,700 on DK. Over on FanDuel, different story. He's $21. Where Cameron Smotherman 6,700 on DK, $9 on FanDuel. Smotherman, people probably remember him from his fight on the Contender Series. He comes out of that Fury FC system down there in Texas, which if you follow regional MMA, Fury FC is a organization that's bringing a lot of fighters to the UFC, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I like these reputable gyms. I mean, reputable promotions. If you're around the game, and you can tell who is and who isn't. I don't really like the loss to Charalampos Gregorio, but outside of that blitz from Gregorio, I'm not sure Smotherman would have lost that fight. Anybody can get caught. He got caught in that situation when the stakes were high, and he ended up not getting the contract. But since that, he's turned things around, and he's went on quite a run. He's a pretty talented striker. I still do think that this is a tough matchup going up against Jake Hadley, who looked better at 135 pounds than he has at 125 pounds. This could be a situation where Hadley was killing himself to get down to flyweight, and maybe he's like, shoot, I felt really good at bantamweight. And it was pretty evident in his previous performance against Callan Loughran, because I did not think that he was going to beat Callan Loughran. He's the same fighter that's lost to Charles Johnson, Cody Durden, picked up a win over Malcolm Gordon and Carlos Candelario, but also lost to Alan Nascimento. I think that this is just a misprice. So I don't have to spend too much time on it. I think that Jake Hadley's going to be very popular. I think that he should be a part of most people's lineups. My issue here is that, like, say he comes in at 67, 70% ownership, and scores 75. That's pretty modest. That's not necessary. You don't need that. You might have some other fighters with less, half, 2/3 of the ownership slightly outscore him or come close enough so it allows you to spend up elsewhere with your lineup. So it's not that Hadley's like 7,000. It's still, what's he, 7,700? It's still a misprice. He should win, but I do think that there needs to be some respect for Cameron Smotherman's striking, because Jake Hadley is a good striker, but he really gets fights done with his submission grappling, and I don't necessarily see that happening in this situation. I think it'll be close, but I'll go with Hadley edging him out 29-28, not really scoring all that great, but at 7,700 comes in as a free square, Jason.
Could also be a great way to get a little leverage on the field too, because you got that ownership's going to be high just because of the misprice on DraftKings. FanDuel, totally different story there. But yeah, it's one of those things of in large field tournaments. I think it's if you want to get different, get away from in like cash games type contests, single entry. I'm sure the ownership's going to be high. I mean, cash games, I might just play them in cash games regardless and just say, you know what, I'm just going to take the salary relief and hopefully he goes out there and. In a victory gets to be 75, 80 points and move on in terms of that one. Next up, we got Darren Elkins taking on Daniel Pineda. Pineda -105, Elkins -115. Pineda A200 on DK, 8,000 for Elkins. Elkins $15 on FanDuel, $14 for Pineda. And this is one of those ones that to me, I do think it's probably going to be key in developing in large field GPP tournaments. But like, even though I know that there are people in our Discord community that are all about Darren Elkins this week, I don't have a lot of faith in either one of these guys. We're talking about a 40-year-old versus a 39-year-old. I mean, one guy's nickname is the Damage. Like, that's not a great nickname to have, people. Like Pineda, first round upside. I see that, but like my concern if you are going to roster Daniel Pineda is if he doesn't get that finish in the first round, does Elkins just rack up a ton of points in the second and third round?
Yeah, so what my thoughts on this fight, right? Like, it's necessary for most of your lineups. 8,200, 8,000 is pretty difficult to get away from. It does present some amazing leverage if you do avoid it. So this week I'm all about leverage, and I'm going to try to leverage all these fights and try to set myself up great for success. This fight's going to be extremely popular. You have the pace pusher as the underdog, so you already know that he's going to be technically the highest owned underdog next to Michel Pereira and Jake Hadley. You have the guy in Daniel Pineda, who is a great first-round finisher, great finisher in general, but has been broken over time. They're both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. I think they're both pretty good grapplers. I would give the wrestling edge to Darren Elkins. I would give the striking edge to Daniel Pineda. I got issues with both of them, Jason, right? Like, Darren Elkins, to me, looks like he's fighting underwater. Like, he's slow as hell. And he's hittable. And he's so hittable that his nickname is the Damage. And my worry here is if you are a Darren Elkins backer, he's winning the fight until he's busted up so bad, something lands that scar tissue, all of a sudden – doctor stops it, TKO because of a bad cut. It's possible. It really is possible. And he could be doing well. It can be a competitive fight, but his face just gives out on him because he's taken so much damage over time. Or, other way, is that he's doing well from an activity standpoint, from a volume standpoint, but from the damage criteria of scoring fights, he's not appeasing the judges. So they are going to look at what Daniel Pineda is doing to Darren Elkins rather than the control and the attempts of getting Pineda to the mat or pin him against the cage. I'm interested to see these grappling exchanges between the two. I think that we'll see Elkins land a couple takedowns. He's recently a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵, who's a former tough fighter or UFC fighter. I don't remember if he had any UFC fights, but Holdsworth, I remember, was always nasty with the jiu-jitsu, a part of Team 𝐷𝐼𝐴. Started his own jiu-jitsu branch. Credit to him. Happy for him. I think there's going to be some awesome submission attempts, some awesome reversals. I'm going to side with Daniel Pineda, though. I think that we have seen him in some competitive fights as of late. The fight against Nathaniel Wood, I thought my boy Nathaniel Wood was going to go out there and smoke him, and that did not happen. Pineda was dog tough and lasted throughout. I think that if you put Darren Elkins in that fight against Nathaniel Wood, I think Nathaniel Wood goes right through him. So I'm going to lean towards the damage. No, I can't say that. I'm going to lean towards the guy inflicting the damage in Daniel Pineda to put too much damage on Darren Elkins. So give me Daniel Pineda here to win a decision. But it's going to be a pretty violent fight, and I'm excited for it.
Chris Holdsworth, he did have some fights in the UFC. He ultimately had to retire due to concussion issues. It was a coach at Team Alpha Male for a long time, but yeah, he had a couple fights in the UFC, but then he ran into some concussion issues that ultimately.
I heard some concussion rumors, and I don't want to say them, but I feel really bad for Chris Holdsworth.
As I recall, it was severe concussion symptoms.
Yeah.
And I want almost say that a doctor stepped in on that one too. I mean, it's been a couple of years. I mean, I want to say that was like pre-2020.
Neurologist wouldn't clear him, I don't think. But I think that getting into jiu-jitsu is the second best thing, right? Like, you are putting yourself in a sport that's a non-contact but very physical sport. So at least he could save his brain but still stay in the sport and help coach fighters. But I'm excited to see that fight. And if you avoid it, like I probably will avoid it just because I think it's a tough fight to call to begin with. Yeah. I think it'll set yourself up pretty good leverage-wise on the entire field.
Oh, I mean, look, I think you talked about if you really want to get different on this fight card, it's if you can get away from the main event, get away from Jake Hadley, and get away from Elkins Pineda, and you can put together a lineup you like, that may be, in large field GPPs, a really great way to go there. Next up, we got Nicolau taking on 𝐷𝐿mabayev. 𝐷𝐿mabayev is a 2-1 betting favorite, plus 170 for Nicolau. Nicolau, 7,500 DK. $12 on FanDuel. 𝐷𝐿mabayev, he's 8,700 on DK and $17 on FanDuel, Pete.
I will say that a lot of people are liking Matheus Nicolau, and they're expecting a vet lesson here. My issue with that is Nicolau's durability for flyweight, which usually you don't have to worry about flyweights not having great durability. But I also think that I will say the activity, and I'm not saying activity as far as like competition, but I'm saying like within a fight, you have a guy throwing volume and you have a guy more selective. You know, a lot of times volume wins out when it comes to judges, right? Like, yes, the damage criteria, but the guy who's throwing more typically sets, an impression on a lot of judges. So I think that Almabayev will showcase his striking, which isn't bad at all. It's very wide, very loopy with the hands, lots of spinning attacks. He'll throw a spinning back fist. He'll throw spinning back kicks. I think that people may be sleeping on his striking just because his wrestling's so damn good. He has to respect Matheus Nicolau's ground game, though, because like if he thinks that he's going to go in there and ragdoll him, shoot, he might, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Matheus Nicolau's takedown defense will be sound, at least for the majority of the fight. His jiu-jitsu is solid. I do think, though, that eventually Almabayev just mixes things together so well that he edges rounds out, and I think he's going to get a unanimous decision victory over Matheus Nicolau. But anytime we have a guy on the come-up versus a guy who's been here for a little bit, vet lesson's always on the table. I am not backing Matheus Nicolau here. I would not hate you or disagree with you much if you decided to go that route. But for me, I'm going to go with the guy who is a part of a great team down there at 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐵 FC, trained with Henry Hooft, phenomenal wrestling as well. Tons of experience. They both have a ton of experience. It's just one's experience in the UFC, one's outside the UFC. I think that Almabayev gets it done here. I would just be worried from a volume, not from a volume standpoint, but from his scoring is usually because he gets takedowns, 6, 9, 2 with a finish. What happens if he gets 3, like 1 per round, or maybe 4? Does he necessarily pay off that price tag? I think there's going to be a ton of ownership attached to him. I mean, he scored 105, 118, and 104. At 8,700, I think he's going to be an easy click for a lot of people. But anytime that you're going up against a vet, maybe your scoring diminishes a little bit. So the pick's Almabayev. But again, I'll be trying to get a little different with my lineup and be a little underweight, but I expect him to win.
Yeah, I think I have the same issue as you. I kind of have a concern about fantasy score upside on both sides in this matchup. Yeah. That's why overall I think it's just a fight that necessarily I don't want to get to. Next up, we got Brad Katona, who is a plus 180 betting underdog, taking on Matsumoto, who is a minus 220 betting favorite. He's $9,000 on DK, $18 on FanDuel. Katona, $7,200 on DK, $13 on FanDuel. And, Mitchell, we were talking about game theory at the beginning of the show. Brad Katona is one of those underdogs I don't mind taking a shot here with, even though I know a lot of people are looking at the favorite here.
Yeah, I am with you, man. Like, I think, like, initially when I looked at this card, I'm like, Katona as an underdog? Like, what's this guy got to do to get some respect? But the more I started thinking about it, the more I started watching film, I'm like, man, I know that he was on the Canadian national boxing team and yada yada, but his hands, in my opinion, suck. I don't think that his hands are all that great. I think that his head movement's non-existent. I think that his striking defense is completely non-existent. I think the best way for him to pick up wins was showcased in his previous fight against Jesse Butler, where he just went out there and just ragdolled him with his excellent takedowns. He has excellent fight IQ. So this is something I will say, that Brad Katona has phenomenal fight IQ. He really breaks down things thoroughly leading up to a fight to know tendencies, to know paths to victory. So this is a guy that we can put trust in as far as like executing a game plan. And when you have guys going out there to execute a game plan, it's nice because like, all right, he's fighting for my dollar and he's going to put himself in the best position to do so. My issue here against Gene Matsumoto is just the discrepancy in age while having experience. We're talking about Gene Matsumoto at 25 years old, Katona at 32, but those 32 years he's been a part of the Ultimate Fighter. He's a 2-time Ultimate Fighter winner. He's been in here, but my issue is like, I thought that he should have stuck around. That the fact that he was outside the UFC at one point, like, maybe he's just too difficult to deal with as far as the matchmakers are concerned, but I don't know. And then you see him perform against Garrett Armfield, which Armfield's talented, but Armfield is pretty basic. Good hands, good takedown offense, good takedown defense. Went out there and, got a unanimous decision over Brad Katona. We've seen him go a split with 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐵𝐵. We've seen Cody Gibson have hell rounds with him. And it was the fight of the night where Cody Gibson put crazy volume on him. I think that Gene Matsumoto has some holes in his takedown defense to a point. 𝐷𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵 pushed a crazy pace in the wrestling realm against him. Matsumoto fought for underhooks, did all of the right things to get back up, has really slick jiu-jitsu as well, and capitalized on a guillotine attempt and, choked out Dan 𝐷𝐢𝐬𝐜𝐵. I think that his jiu-jitsu is phenomenal, but people are sleeping on Matsumoto's striking. He hits so hard for the division. He has good kicks. He's tight with his punches. His defense seems better than Brad Katona. I see moments where Katona's so exposed that Matsumoto is going to capitalize and knock him out. That's my bold call. My bold call is that Matsumoto knocks out Brad Katona. But with all that being said, I do respect the fact that Katona is a vet. This could be, on the entire card, this could be the biggest vet lesson attached to the card. So, like, Katona priced as a plus 190 underdog, I think is an excellent spot to get to as far as, like, cash games are considered. But if you are going for upside, I think that Matsumoto has some pretty sneaky upside to finish Katona and be one of the first people, if not the first person to do it. Let me check and see if Katona's ever been finished. He has not been finished. So I'd love to see what that KO prop is for Gene Matsumoto. It's just an optics standpoint from fight film that I saw and that I think can be applied to Katona. Whether it happens, I don't know. But it is pretty ballsy to have Matsumoto here at a plus, minus 250 favorite price tag.
I like what you said there, talking about cash gains and Brad Katona. Could be someone that, gets some, takedowns early on in the fight, racks up some points. Maybe Matsumoto gets back to the feet, knocks him out later on in the fight. You might be able to, save yourself a little bit of dollars there, especially if you're maybe trying to get away from some of the chalk on this fight card. Next up, we got a female matchup. We got Edwards taking on Vidal. Vidal is a plus 230 betting underdog, minus 2.8. Plus 230 betting underdog for Vidal. Edwards is minus 280. Edwards, 8,900 DK, $19 on FanDuel. Vidal, 7,300 DK, $11 on FanDuel. Pete, this is, one of those things of, you look at Edwards here at 8,900, and the thing that scares the crap out of me is she is a decision fighter.
Oh, it smells like a trap. It smells like a trap. I am trying to sniff out these traps, guys, and, all I'm going to say is that Charles Johnson, historically an underdog fighter. Joselyne Edwards, historically an underdog fighter who screws around too much for my liking as well. So we'll see if this pays off this week. And I could get lucky, I could get unlucky. But what I think is that Joselyne Edwards on the entire fight card, similar to Charles Johnson, has 3 split decisions, whether they're victories or defeats, to her record, which is a ridiculous amount. To have split decisions in general is crazy. In women's MMA, it's more common, it seems, at least. But Joselyne Edwards, we've seen the path to beating her. If you can get on top, you can take her down. If you can be heavier and just stronger than her in the clinch, and you can weigh on her, and you can be aggressive with combinations, I think you can win rounds. Excuse me. I think you can win rounds against Joselyne Edwards. We've seen it happen. And 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐵𝐵 is a wrestler to the highest order in women's MMA. She's phenomenal. So I'm not going to necessarily hold that too harshly over Joselyne Edwards' head. How the hell do you lose to Nora Cornell? I'm not a big Cornell guy. How do you have a split decision to 𝐷𝐿𝐶𝐻𝐵H Pudilova? How do you have a split decision to �ji-Yeon Kim? You lose to Jessica Rose Clark, Karol Rosa. Split decision to Sarah Alpar? What are we doing? Okay, so, and then you guys could really poke holes at Tamires Vidal. I'm here for it, and I will probably agree with you. She does not look all that great. Similar to Sumudaerji, I would say that she's one of the biggest wild cards on the entire slate as well. Nobody really knows what she's great at other than being aggressive. She's been TKO'd essentially twice by getting hit in the boob. And I'm not kidding around. She got punched in the boob against Montserrat Hendon, called timeout. The referee at the time, Carrie Hadley, I think it was, intervened and then resumed the fight. And then, because you can't call timeout from a body punch like that. And then it was a split decision. And then she ended up giving up against Melissa Gatto because of the same strike to the boob, the body shot. So, a lot of people, including myself, aren't all that sold on Tamires Vidal's dog, a part of her, how much she wants to be in there. She kind of has some quit in her. But I will say, as long as she's able to bully you a little bit, she has some confidence. And I think she's just going to be the bigger fighter come fight night. She's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. She's been doing a lot of gi competitions. Does that translate? I'm not so sure. But I know that Joselyne Edwards is a purple belt. So there should be some gap in skill from a grappling standpoint. I do think that we will see Tamires Vidal throw heavy, as she always does, super wide. And then we could see Joselyne Edwards get put in some bad spots on the ground. I'm going to embrace the volatility. And I totally get it if you think I'm crazy. I just don't know how we can get behind Joselyne Edwards at that crazy price tag. With all the fights we've seen in the UFC, she should cut through Tamires Vidal quickly. But she hasn't done that to anybody. So why am I expecting her to do it to Tamires Vidal, who has this unknown about her? Give me Tamires Vidal to come through as a crazy big underdog, similar to Sumudaerji, when everybody's not believing. I think one of them are going to come through. So yeah, give me Tamires Vidal here to pick up a decision victory over Joselyne Edwards in a crazy underdog spot.
I like Edwards in the spot. I just don't like the price point. That to me is what scares me about it, and the fantasy score upside there. Next up, we got another female match. We got Jessica Penne taking on Elise Reed. Elise Reed is a minus 180 betting favorite, plus 150 for Jessica. She's 7,600 DK, $13 on FanDuel, where Elise Reed is 8,600 DK and $17 on FanDuel. I don't feel great about saying this. Like, if I'm just looking for a straight up betting winner as an underdog.
Stop. I already know what you're gonna say. You're gonna back her?
It's tough for me to back either one of these fighters. Let me just say that. But if I'm looking for an underdog, I don't think she scores well, by the way, when we're talking about DFS. But I don't mind an underdog shot in Jessica Penne.
Homegirl's 41, about to be 42. I mean, the game will pass you by if you are not active enough. A fight where you should mop the floor with your opponent. Jessica Penne back in the day, I think, would have cut through Elise Reed like butter. I just don't think that's the same fighter. She's 42. She hasn't been competing. Look at who Elise Reed's been competing against. And is she having the greatest success? No, but like, it's kind of a tough schedule if I'm being honest. Like, she just picked up a victory. She lost actually against Lupita Godinez. Okay, via submission. That's right up Jessica Penne's alley, so I could see what you're saying. Beat Jinyu Frey, fought Loma Lookboonmee, lost via submission. Okay, beat Melissa Martinez, got finished against Sam Hughes, beat Corey McKenna, lost to Sijara Eubanks. Like, I know who all those women's MMA fighters are. So like she's put herself in some difficult, fights. Granted, if Jessica Penne takes her back, do I like it? Hell no, I don't like that. I just don't know if she can take her back. I think that, like, on the feet, she's so bad. I think she's so bad, and I think she might show her age. But the one thing going for Jessica Penne is that she is surrounded by some friends who are still active, like Angela Hill and all of that whole room over there. I just think that this is a situation where what should happen years ago doesn't, and the worst fighter wins here. And in 2024, the better fighter is Elise Reed. So I don't care what would have happened 5 years ago. It's 2024, and I think Elise Reed really shows that, youth means something, or not even youth, but just like activity in the sport. Jessica Penne kind of, teetering on retirement, going in and out of the sport. Will only take a matchup if it makes sense. Like, this is a winnable fight for Penne, sure. But would I rather take a Jessica Penne underdog shot or take a Tamires Vidal completely wild card shot? Give me Tamires Vidal, who is 26. Mm-hmm. Penne's 40, almost 42. So, yeah, that's where I lie on this. I think that Elise Reed beats the hell out of Jessica Penne.
Yeah, it's just, there's part of me also is very surprising that Penne is still in the UFC at this point. Next up, we got Martinez taking on Ardelean. Ardelean is a plus 105 betting underdog, minus 125 for Martinez. She's 8,400 DK, $16 on FanDuel. Where Elise on the other side, she is 7,800 DK and $14 on FanDuel, Pete.
All right, before I break this fight down, thank you guys so much for your consistent support. Happy to be back doing the show with Jason. Thankfully, he's okay. That's why we haven't been here the past couple weeks. If you could do us a favor and hit that like button, get us over 100 likes per video. That's really, really crucial for us. Commenting on the videos is really important as well. We'll gladly engage with you in the comment section below. And thanks, as always, for supporting the channel. Now, this fight between Elise Ardelean and Melissa Martinez, I think, is another trap. And I think it's a trap because I think Elise Ardelean is going to get a ton of ownership as an underdog with takedown upside. I may be off, like crazy off this week, and it happens, right? There are plenty of times, and I'm open and honest when I'm off. But I will say that the OnlyFans fade is like a real thing. And Elise Ardelean is one of the most popular OnlyFans fighters out there. And yes, she is a part of a solid gym. Yes, she can pick up some takedowns. I think she might get lit up like a Christmas tree here against the renowned kickboxing champion in Melissa Martinez. Super Melly did not show her best skill set come fight night in her debut against Elise Reed. But I think that Melissa Martinez will utilize that karate background, that kickboxing background, getting to her kicks, her side kicks, her round kicks to the body, to the head. I think she's going to pick apart Alice Ardelean. We've seen Melissa Martinez on the regional scene get takedowns of her own right, work towards submissions, defend takedowns. I think Ardelean, she will throw down and she's dog tough, but I think she might be in for a surprise here against 𝐷𝐵𝐵. So I think it's somewhat of a contrarian pick because nobody wants to pay mid-priced women's MMA fighters. So at 8,400, just like Elise Reed, I am going to go with Melissa Martinez. I think they could be in good spots to really put together some high volume en route to a decision or a potential finish. So give me Melissa Martinez here, 𝐷𝐵𝐵𝐵.
Yeah, I'm with you on Martinez in that situation as well. And then, of course, our first fight of the night, which I'm actually really surprised this is the first fight of the night. I would have thought the UFC would have put this on the main card just because of the likely scenario is someone is getting knocked out in this one. You got Joselyne Lane or Robelis Despaigne. Despaigne is a minus 360 betting favorite, plus 274 Lane. Lane 1,600 DK, $10 on FanDuel. Despaigne 9,400 on DK, $20 on FanDuel. We all saw what happened last time out. We saw there is no grappling with Despaigne, and you got to imagine if you're the Joselyne Lane camp, Pete. Like the thought process has got to be look, we're going in there against a guy who's got massive length for this division. I'm going to say it's 84-inch reach that he has for this division. But like, if this thing plays out on the feet, I think Despaigne should knock him out.
Yeah, I mean, he should. I mean, what should happen a lot of times in MMA doesn't. I mean, like, heavyweight division in general is super volatile, right? We talk about it all the time. 84-inch reach for Robelis Despaigne against Joselyne Lane's 80-inch reach. 80 inches is still a lot of reach. So Joselyne Lane isn't a small guy by any means. But he's susceptible to getting punched and knocked out. I mean, he's been KO'd or TKO'd in all 5 of his defeats. This is the biggest setup fight that the UFC has done in some time. And I know they want like the next Francis Ngannou to come in here and just be a crazy KO artist. Yeah. Robelis Despaigne is good. And the fact that like the Taekwondo Olympian didn't have good takedown defense shouldn't have been all that of a surprise to us. I understand that. I was hoping that he would, not get exposed against 𝐷𝐻𝐿𝐴 Acosta, who's predominantly a boxer. But it's all about who's the better MMA fighter. You can't be the better MMA fighter if you're unconscious. So like there was a point where Joselyne Lane was taking people down on the regional scene and ground and pounding them. I mean, that's what happened on the Contender Series against Richard Jacoby. I do think that Robelis Despaigne catches him somehow with a kick, with a knee, with a hammer fist. I don't believe in the chin of Joselyne Lane. I think the skill set is there for Joselyne Lane to beat Robelis Despaigne, but I don't trust in the durability. So I'm just not going to play this fight in a single entry just because I don't really trust Despaigne all that much. And outside of the first minute, I don't necessarily think that he pays off. I think that when he knocks Joselyne Lane down, it's just going to be one time and it's over. So for me, I'll be taking the contrarian approach and avoiding it just because of the headache. But Despaigne by first round, second round TKO.
And I'll say this, like, I don't blame the UFC for putting him in this matchup and trying to build him up. I mean, this is I was watching a video where Dominic Cruz was talking about the differences between Merab Dvalishvili and Sugar Sean O'Malley, where he talked about, hey, with Sean, he was fast-tracked to the title matchup, where on the other side, Merab literally had to go through 7, 8, 9 ranked guys before he got there. And look, we all know the UFC likes a certain fighting style. And, this one I think is definitely set up. I mean, look, if they did not want to be in the Despaigne business, they would put him up there against someone who could wrestle, because we saw what happened in his last matchup. But I do like Despaigne to go out there and get a knockout win. Let's get into our straight up fight picks. We'll get into some listener questions to wrap up this show. The main event, I'll go with the favorite here in Anthony Hernandez.
All right, I'm going to go Michel Pereira.
I will go Kyler Phillips.
Kyler Phillips.
Give me Charles Johnson.
Sumudaerji.
Okay, I'll go Jake Hadley.
Hadley.
I don't feel good on either side of this one. I'm going to say Elkins just because I think he weathers a first-round storm.
Okay, I'm going to go Pineda.
Give me 𝐉𝐿mabayev.
Yep, Almabayev for me.
Matsumoto. Even though you were doing a great job of selling me up on Vidal, give me Edwards. I think she wins it by decision.
All right, give me Vidal.
Oh, God. I can't do it. Give me
Reed.
Martinez.
Despaigne.
I hate that none of my picks are underdogs, but I just...
You got no underdogs?
No, I don't.
Sometimes it's like that, though, guys.
Yeah.
No, I mean, technically, you got Elkins.
Yeah. Well, he's actually, at least that's when I put my sheet together last night. He was a betting favorite. Let's go into Discord to get some questions here. First up, value plays under 8K and a core 3 on DraftKings. I think when you look at value plays underneath 8K, that I like the fantasy score upside. I would say in a cash game, I think Brad Katona has some value there at 7,200. You made some great points about Sumudaerji.
I think I don't clearly top that list, though. Right?
I mean, Michel, I wouldn't say is a value play just because I think he's going to be very popular.
Yeah, I think that Hadley's clearly atop that list of underneath 8K. Do I think he scores well? I don't know, but I mean, like sometimes you just can't get greedy, right? Like you need an underdog to come through. He's most likely coming through. So Hadley at that price tag is the starting point. Second starting point would be the main event. Pick a side. Third starting point would be the Elkins Pineda fight. I mean, like pick a side and hope for the best.
In terms of a core 3, I think I would start with 𝐃𝐬𝐬𝐵𝐵 because of that takedown upside and the takedown defense deficiencies we see out of Rob Font. And then I would probably say the second core would be either one of the fighters in the main event. I do prefer Anthony Hernandez. Pete's more on the 𝗃𝐿𝐵𝐻 side. And then for a third one, I would say Despaigne just because I think he's going to win by first round knockout.
Yeah, so I like the leverage of paying up for Kyler Phillips, taking a shot on Gene Matsumoto, and then taking a shot on 𝗃𝐿𝐵𝐻 to come through in the main event.
Yeah, just kind of scrolling through Discord to get some questions that maybe came in over the past day or so here. We already talked to the value plays and core plays. Sam with his usual questions, but we'll start with his road to the mansion 5.5.
I say less. I think it's a good number.
I think it's a good number. I really do because
he's gotten significantly better over time.
I mean, I just there's certain fights that I just look at and say it's probably going to end via a decision.
What time do these fights start?
4:00 Eastern time.
Okay.
I would say under 5.5. We already went over top core plays. Favorite parlays. To me, it's over at PFL. I've already got a bet in. I've parlayed Renan Ferreira and 𝐼𝐬𝐳 at plus 540.
I don't hate it. I think Pacheco's damn good. I think Cyborg's good too, but.
Well, I mean, I think the concern with Cyborg is, and we talk about this, Father Time hits every fighter. And at some point, it's going to hit her. And this is the thing that I find really interesting about the PFL show tomorrow. If you're a PFL executive, what do you want to happen?
They don't care, remember? Did you see that video where they don't care about anything?
Just like
the fighters do everything.
Just
like 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐳 not having the hardest path.
Oh God, bro! When they talk that, I'm trying to keep it clean. I'm trying here, but when they talk, they don't match make. Bullshit. Yeah. Bullshit. Just look at Dakota. They want her in the playoffs. Like, look, like we have seen how they've done this. They match make the crap out of the regular season. Every time I hear Don Davis say that, I go, all right, let's hear 𝐷𝐴 and Mike Hogan say that publicly.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I mean, come on. Bro, there is so many things that the PFL executives say that I literally shake my head about. That I just go, like, it's one of these things with the main event tomorrow. So if Francis Ngannou goes out there and let's just say he destroys Renan Ferreira in under a minute, is that a great look for the PFL?
I think it's a lose-lose in a way, right? I
think what they need a competitive fight that shows Renan Ferreira is on that same level as Francis Ngannou, but Ngannou wins.
Yeah, so for me, right, like if Ngannou goes out there and starches him, you'll have UFC people saying, well, that's proof that the PFL is trash. Then if you have Renan Ferreira go out there and starch Francis Ngannou, then they're going to say, well, that's why we didn't re-sign Francis Ngannou. That's why we let him walk. We didn't want to be a part of the Francis Ngannou business anymore. So in a way, it's a lose-lose if you're comparing it, but like true fans know. It's a hell of a fight.
This is my problem when the PFL executives do interviews. They always have to mention UFC. They always have to mention Dana White. And they always have to mention John Jones. It's like, just talk about your product. And I said this on my show yesterday. If you tell me I can only watch one MMA event tomorrow, it's the PFL card. Yeah. It's a solid card they put together. I think that I think they should have tried to get this thing just on ESPN Plus, not ESPN Plus pay-per-view, to get their product in front of more eyeballs. There's going to be a lot of people that say, hey, I just spent $80 to watch UFC 307. I don't want to spend another $50 to watch PFL. I think internally it would be interesting to be a fly on the wall to see exactly what they feel. But yeah, they just
make some boneheaded decisions a part of that promotion, from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. Things that we know privately, things that we know publicly, where they just need to do things differently. I mean, like if they put more effort into their broadcasting, cutting things out, not repeating things, like the lag time, like it needs to be an optically appeasing and pleasing, thing. It should not be a freaking marathon every Saturday.
Oh, I
remember, Friday or Thursday or Wednesday, depending on what freaking month they put a show on.
Oh, I remember having a conversation with the manager earlier this year, and he was at one of their shows, and he said, I know this is brutal to watch on TV because of how long he was in arena. It's even a worse experience. He goes, it's just, there's just like, at the end of the day, when we sit in front of our television set and watch MMA, I'm not here for filler content. Like I get that you're trying to expand your, you've got your broadcast formatted in a certain way, but it's just like, just give us the fights there. Let's see here. Jason and Pete's specials. To me, the first fight of the night, I mean, someone entered a score channel, put the stat in there. I want to say it was a couple of days ago. Was it like 2/3 of the time the first fight of the night has been optimal over the last couple of months?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's a pain in the ass to try to figure out sometimes. And like, we've recently been having like underdogs in the main event and underdogs in the first fight of the night popping. I mean, but like, there's a reason why like Jason for the longest time was avoiding it in single entries because it's just volatile.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I mean, but
it's a stage setter, and that's for every card.
Yeah.
When you go to a fight and you see the first fight of the night, it's like, okay, set the stage for the rest of the card. And is it going to be a boring night or is it going to be a crazy, ridiculous night?
No doubt about it. Favorite strikers on this card, I would go Despaigne would be my number one just because what he can do there. He to me, he's a clear favorite striker for me.
I'm going to give you oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What he could do in the length aspect of it.
Yeah.
But obviously we know the concerns that are there with him.
I think easy one's Michel Pereira. I think Matsumoto is a sneaky one with the power. I think from hands and legs, it might be a tie between Melissa Martinez and Phillips. I'm just expecting versatile attacks from both of them. And I'll give Phillips the first place nod on that one.
Yeah, one of the questions we did get was about favorite grapplers in terms of that. I look at grapplers. I think Fluffy Hernandez, Phillips. Darren Elkins would be another one I'd throw in there. Katona would be another one I would throw in there.
Yeah, you're not wrong on that. I'll still say Almabayev, even though I'm not really sold of the takedown volume in this particular matchup. But you hit the rest of them perfectly.
In terms of top punt plays, I feel like when we talk about the 3 women's fights on this card, I think one underdog will likely pull off an upset. I think I would say also via decision. I mentioned about Katona is someone that does intrigue me as an underdog. You talked about Sumudaerji as an underdog as well.
Yeah, I got Sue and Tamires Vidal as my long shot ones, but I mean, I do see a path for both of them to actually pull it off.
Sam's got another question here he asked for us. He goes, when related to core plays, will you consider at least one fighter being a 12-fight card or 2 fighters? I think, Sam, it depends on the type of contest you're playing in. I think that first goes into it. If I'm playing, we kind of talked about this in game theory. To me, I would probably either start my lineup with Despaigne or Phillips and then try to get different in large field GPPs.
Yeah, I mean, recognizing where everybody's going to go and realizing that there's still other fights and you only need 6 fighters to come through. You don't have to be on the same fights. Like it helps when it hits, but there's plenty of times when it's mediocre. And when it's mediocre, you should have avoided it. Just like all these chalky picks for NFL or NBA, like when you know that somebody's going to be on somebody, you either have to embrace the chalk or you have to avoid it. And especially if you think that there's other ones that are little spend ups or slightly below to give you leverage on the field.
Get some YouTube questions in here before we get out of here on this episode of Fight HQ. Let's see here. Hey, Pete, I have a question for you. If you can answer it at the end, one of your thoughts on the UFC lawsuit settlement. I'm not sure how much you've really followed that. No. There was me and Daniel talked about it yesterday with the declarations that the fighters presented there. There was if you've seen the clip from Brendan Schaub talked about the struggles that Shane Carwin is having. The best way I would describe the declarations of the fighters in this lawsuits, there was a lot of similar characteristics in a lot of them, talking about the various health issues that they're dealing with. Sean Spencer talked about basically all the stuff that he needs to get done that he just cannot financially afford. There were other fighters that just talked about the financial aspect of it, of the personal struggles that they are having. I forget the date that it goes in front of, I want to say it's Judge Boulware in Nevada to see if this one's going to get approved, because the last settlement was not approved, told them to go back to the drawing board here. The one thing I will say about the antitrust lawsuit, as obviously the big talking point is about the financial side of it, but there's other things that are part of this lawsuit in terms of the settlement actually are going to be better for fighters long term in terms of some of the contract issues that we have seen out there. Samuel says, do you guys think that being under on all women fights is the way to go this week? I don't love the GP upside is the best way I put it.
Yeah, I used to avoid women's MMA like wholeheartedly until like we start seeing these underdogs coming through left and right, and even in like mediocre scores, it just helps having a winner. So like I always start elsewhere, and if it happens to fall in your lineup, like I wouldn't hate it. I think the most contrarian thing is when you do women's MMA spend ups, because not too many people want to do that.
We'll end on this one. Samuel says, is Jake Hadley still a free square this week? I don't know if I say free square.
I think Cameron Smotherman's solid, but I don't think that he's like going to come in here and dominate Jake Hadley. I mean, Jake Hadley's been put on his back numerous times playing jiu-jitsu. His striking is in my opinion. It's okay. He's at a weight class that he did look great against Colin Loughran. But is it really his true home? I don't know. We'll have to see. I think Hadley should win. He should, but when you're comparing the odds to salaries, he is a free square.
Yeah.
My personal opinion, I don't know if I really have all that much just because why?
I think it's a great opportunity for Cameron Smotherman step in here, replacing Brady Heastand. By the way, just to note, they are both represented by the same management company, so that's probably plays a key role in how Cameron Smotherman was able to get. Of course, the management company that Cameron Smotherman is represented by has probably 150 UFC fighters. I know it's over 100. I know that for certain. It's over 100. Yeah. I mean, this industry is controlled by, I would say, a majority of the UFC fighters are probably, there's probably about 5 or 6 agencies that all truly run this sport.
Freaking crazy, bro.
Crazy. It is crazy over there, but of course,
I'm about to start a management company. I should. Jason and Pete management, Fight HQ. I don't think I want to deal with that though, because I definitely don't want to deal with that because I'll be yelling at fighters and Come
on, didn't you look? You know what it's like to be a matchmaker.
Oh, bro, do I?
Now you want to be on the other side of the equation?
No, I'm straight.
Yeah, trust me. Yeah. By the way, I will mention here in 3 weeks from today, I'll be down in Miami for Double Down FC number 2. Be on the call with 𝐉𝐸𝐿𝐼𝐸𝐿 and Channing Crowder. So Double Down starting to announce those fights. People have asked me. I do know the fight card, but it is not my position to say what fights are on the fight card. But yeah,
what's the date of that?
November 8th. So I'll be it's a Friday, so I'm traveling down there on a Wednesday night, and Thursday will be production meetings. Friday will be the fight card, and then Saturday I will get my butt back to Tampa because the Bucks have a home game on Sunday. So yeah, and then the Bucks bye week is after that. Me and Pete have kind of talked about maybe I might go up to Connecticut for to watch the fights with Pete there. That's the Jones 𝐉𝐸𝐿 fight card.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out because I can't do anything at Mohegan. So we might have to go across the pond and go to Foxwoods. They got a DraftKings Sportsbook at Foxwoods, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely a cool possibility.
Yeah, so of course, as always, we appreciate everyone tunes in to each episode of Fight HQ. Of course, we got our Discord channel, totally free to join. Great conversations going in there. People are already talking about who they're putting in their lineups over there. Of course, we got our DraftKings contest. The link is below in the notes of this episode, whether you're watching us on YouTube or if you're checking us out on the podcast channels. And of course, we always appreciate we get YouTube memberships. Appreciate everyone that's jumping in on that. We'll have some more content coming to the channel here over the next couple of weeks. You're going to be adding some UFC fighter interviews up there, so you can get to hear those conversations that I have with UFC fighters. And that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. We'll talk to you next week as we're going to get you ready for UFC 308, which, Pete, I don't know if you notice, 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐵𝐵 talking that shit.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I like it just because like it's a really good matchup. It's a really good matchup. I can't wait to break that down. Now that's a card that I can get excited about.
And the best part about that card, Pete, it is on ESPN Plus. It is not a traditional pay-per-view because it's an afternoon show. I want to say the prelims are going to start I want to say 10 a.m. East Coast time, maybe 11 a.m. Main card 2 p.m. Eastern time because it's over in Abu Dhabi. Yeah, I think it's Abu Dhabi. I don't think it's Saudi Arabia. I think it's Abu Dhabi. So yeah, this was actually a fight card that was supposed to be headlined by Islam Makhachev, but of course because of his injury, he's not going to take place there. And now we're going to see. If people have not seen, it sounds like Umar Nurmagomedov's taking on Song Yudong here at UFC Tampa in December, which kind of now leads to what are they doing with Merab? A lot of speculation that maybe O'Malley's going to get an immediate rematch.
There we go.
Well, I think we'll leave on this. The part of the issue is when Merab wants to defend his title versus when Umar wants to fight. Umar does not want to fight during Ramadan. So I guess that plays into that as well. So that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week right here on Fight HQ.